I was unloading a few fishing rods from the back of my truck when she marched up the driveway like she owned the whole street. Her name was Amanda Tolliver, president of our HOA and the self-appointed ruler of our quiet cul-de-sac. Dyed blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand. You know the type. She didn't even bother with a hello. You need to remove that boat from your driveway, Franklin. It violates Article 7, Section 3 of the Covenants. No recreational vehicles in view for more than 72 hours, she snapped, glaring at my modest base boat like it was a rusted-out junker. I leaned on the tailgate and crossed my arms. It's only been here since yesterday, Amanda. I'm taking my son Ethan out this weekend. It's not staying. The rules are the rules, she said, tapping her pen against the clipboard like it was a gavel. It doesn't matter why it's there. I've issued a formal violation notice. You'll be fined $100 daily until it's removed. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I took a breath and said, "You sure you want to do this?" She narrowed her eyes. "Don't test me, Franklin. I've been more than patient with you. That boat's an eyesore. The board agrees." Funny thing was, I was the board. Or at least, I used to be, before Amanda staged her little HOA coup last year. She strong-armed her way into the presidency when most of the neighborhood was too busy or too tired to care, and ever since, she'd been on a power trip. I watched her stomp back to her golf cart like she'd just won a battle. But she didn't know what I knew. See, 2 years ago I bought a strange little strip of land from a bank auction. Dirt cheap. It didn't make much sense until I looked at the survey, that strip of land. It ran right under Amanda's house. She'd built her home 20 years ago on what she thought was HOA common land. Turns out, someone messed up the original platting. The actual ownership had been in limbo until I scooped it up for a few $1,000. I never said a word. I figured it might come in handy someday. That day had apparently arrived. I walked back inside, chuckling as I passed the violation notice she'd taped to my door. Ethan, my 10-year-old, was sitting on the couch with a juice box. "Dad, is the boat gonna be okay?" I ruffled his hair. "Oh, buddy. The boat's gonna be just fine. Amanda, though, she's about to have a real bad week." HOA story, HOA stories, Homeowners Association stories. Saturday morning came quiet and humid, dew still clinging to the grass, the lake not yet awake. I had the boat hitched up to the truck while Ethan double-checked his tackle box. The kid had a knack for detail, took after his mom that way. We were pulling out when a white sedan skidded into my driveway like it was chasing a bank robber. Amanda got out without shutting her door, heels clicking on the concrete like nails on tile. "You're making a mockery of this community," she said. Not a greeting, not a breath of courtesy. I let the engine idle and hooked an arm out the window. "I'm taking my son fishing." "You got something urgent, or is this just more theater?" She lifted a folded document from her purse and slapped it against my driver's side mirror. "You've been escalated. The fine is cumulative now, $200 per day, retroactive." The board voted unanimously. Unanimously, I tilted my head. "You sure about that? Don't play games with me. You're not above the rules, Franklin." I nodded slowly, looked down at the paper. It wasn't even notarized. Just a typed-up notice with a fake letterhead and her signature at the bottom. No legal stamp. No minutes from the alleged meeting. No member signatures. "Tell you what," I said, putting the truck in park. "You go ahead and keep stacking those fines. But next time you hand me an official document, make sure it's not printed on the back of a PTA flyer." Her mouth opened, then closed. She glanced down at the paper in her hand and flipped it over. Sure enough, there was a fundraising ad for the elementary school's bake sale on the reverse side. Ethan giggled from the passenger seat. Amanda's eyes flashed, but she said nothing else. She just stomped back to her car and peeled off, leaving a streak of rubber behind her. We spent the day on the lake, caught a couple of largemouths, nothing huge, but Ethan was over the moon. He told me he wanted to be a marine biologist. I told him that was a great plan, as long as he never let anyone like Amanda tell him where he could park his dreams. By Monday, things escalated. I came home from work to find a bright orange sticker slapped across my garage door. Final warning. There was also a manila envelope duct taped to the handle. Inside were 2 new violation notices, a photocopy of the same fine schedule, and a letter claiming that if I didn't comply within 48 hours, they would begin lien proceedings against my home. That's when I knew Amanda wasn't just bluffing anymore. She was trying to create a paper trail, something she could use to file a fraudulent lien and make it look legitimate to the county clerk's office. Most people in the neighborhood wouldn't fight it. They'd rather pay a few $100 than hire a lawyer. She was counting on that. Unfortunately for her, I wasn't most people. I took the envelope inside and started pulling files from my cabinet. It took me less than 15 minutes to dig up the purchase agreement for the strip of land. It was all their parcel number, GPS coordinates, deed transfer, even the tax records. The county had been taking my payments for 24 months without a peep. I called my friend Max, a land use attorney who owed me a favor. We'd served together in the same unit overseas before he went to law school and I got into construction. He picked up on the second ring. "Franklin," he said, "you still got that weird patch of land you bought for beer money?" "Yep," I said. "Turns out Amanda Tolliver built her McMansion on top of it, and now she's threatening to lien my house over a boat," he whistled. "That's poetic. I want to go by the book, everything legal." No drama, but I'm not letting her bully anyone else. Max was already typing. "I'll draft a cease and desist, file it with the HOA's registered agent. Also, you got a survey map? Better. I've got a full parcel overlay with structural encroachments. Her kitchen, master bedroom, and half her garage are on my dirt. No easements, none. The original plat was misfiled in '88. I bought the land clean. This could get spicy." Good, she picked the wrong guy. By Wednesday, Max had the paperwork in hand. We mailed a certified packet to Amanda, 1 to the HOA's legal counsel and a 3rd to the county records office for documentation. I also printed a copy and delivered it in person to Amanda's mailbox, just to be sure she got it. Thursday morning, I saw her pacing in front of her house, phone glued to her ear, looking like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. That evening, she showed up at my door again, this time without the clipboard. "You think you're clever," she said, voice tight with restrained fury. "No," I said. "I think I'm patient and legally correct. You're threatening to displace me, that's extortion." "No," I said again. "Extortion is threatening to take someone's home over made-up fines and fake meetings. What I'm doing is asserting property rights." "Big difference?" She hesitated, then tried a different angle. "We can come to an arrangement. Maybe you join the board again. We can work this out." "I'm not interested in deals, but I might be interested in something else." Her eyes narrowed. "What? You resign? Today? You send a letter to the HOA and step down. You also rescind every bogus fine you've issued in the last year. Every single one." "That's blackmail." "No, that's mercy." She went pale. "I'll give you until Saturday," I said, stepping back inside. "After that, I start charging rent." I closed the door before she could respond. Friday came with rain, soft and steady. I stayed inside and reviewed the HOA bylaws. Turns out, Amanda had skipped a major requirement to pass new fines. Any financial penalties had to be voted on by a quorum of homeowners, not just board members. And the vote had to be recorded in writing. None of that had happened. I printed everything I'd found and prepared a packet for the county HOA Oversight Division. They rarely got involved unless someone made a formal complaint with documented evidence. I planned to deliver mine in person. Saturday morning, Amanda's resignation email went out to the neighborhood. I know because it was forwarded to me by 6 different neighbors before I even finished my coffee. The boat stayed parked in my driveway. The fine notices stopped. The orange sticker came down, but I wasn't done. I walked over to the HOA's shared bulletin board, which Amanda had always kept locked behind a glass case. I taped up a copy of the land survey and a note that said, "Know your property lines. Know your rights. Don't be bullied." By the end of the weekend, 4 other homeowners came by to ask how they could challenge fines they'd paid over the past year. One of them was a retired postal worker who'd been fined for excessive mailbox rust. Another was a nurse who got a warning for having her trash bins out 20 minutes early after a night shift. We held the first community meeting in months the following week. No suits, no clipboards, just neighbors. We voted to suspend all fines until a full audit could be done. A temporary committee was formed to review the HOA's actions over the last 2 years. Amanda didn't attend. The legal rent notice for her encroachment went out Monday. Max recommended a modest monthly rate, just enough to make a point. If she wanted to negotiate an easement or buy the land outright, she could. But the days of her pushing people around were over. As for my boat, it's still in the driveway. Ethan and I are planning another trip next weekend. But this time, when we roll out, we'll be towing more than fishing rods. We'll be towing the start of something better for this neighborhood. The first real crack in Amanda's carefully constructed world came on a cloudy Tuesday morning, 5 days after she stepped down. I was in my workshop, replacing a busted trailer winch, when an unfamiliar sedan pulled into my driveway. A man in slacks and a windbreaker stepped out, holding a leather portfolio and a folded tripod in the other hand. He introduced himself as Darren Kessler, a property assessor from the county's land use department. I got a call from a woman claiming she was being extorted over a parcel error, he said, glancing at the house across the street. Said you were threatening to evict her. Not true, I said, wiping my hands on a rag. She built her house partially on land I legally own. I haven't asked her to move. I just want proper recognition and rent for the use of my land. I can show you the deed and county filings. He nodded. Mind if I take a few measurements? Go ahead. You'll want to start at the southeast corner. It's where her garage crosses the lot line. He set up his tripod and started shooting laser readings. I left him to it and went back to my workbench, but I could see from the window when Amanda came out of her house in a bathrobe and started gesturing wildly at him. Darren didn't say much, just kept pointing at the survey printouts and occasionally shaking his head. He left without saying a word to her. 15 minutes later, I had an email in my inbox confirming the encroachment and validating my parcel ownership. That was the second nail in Amanda's coffin. The third came from a direction I hadn't even considered. A man named Rob Delgado knocked on my door the next morning. He wore steel-toed boots, a neon utility vest, and looked like he hadn't shaved in a week. Said he lived 2 streets over and had heard what happened through the grapevine. She fined me for unapproved exterior modifications last summer, he said, stepping into my garage. All I did was replace a rotting fence. Sent me a violation, then said I needed to pay a retroactive permitting fee to the HOA, $350. Sounded fishy, but I didn't want trouble. You ever see a receipt? I asked. He shook his head. Just a PayPal link to some generic email, no breakdown, no confirmation from the board. Got a copy of that notice? He pulled it up on his phone. The email address was a dead giveaway. hoexecutivecommittee@gmail.com. There was no executive committee. That title didn't exist in our bylaws. I started making calls. Over the next 2 days, I spoke with 9 other residents who had all paid similar fees to the same address. Mailbox repairs, landscaping penalties, even a supposed holiday decoration overage. All unauthorized, all undocumented. It wasn't just power-hungry behavior anymore. It was fraud. I brought the evidence to Max, who didn't waste time. This is criminal, he said, scrolling through screenshots and scanned notices. Misuse of HOA authority for personal financial gain. That's wire fraud, probably tax evasion, and if she deposited those payments into a personal account, we're looking at theft. Think the county will take it seriously. They won't have a choice. He contacted the district attorney's office and filed a formal complaint with documentation attached. Within 48 hours, a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit visited my property. His name was Detective Rivas, and he had the patient, tired eyes of someone who'd seen a lot of petty greed turn into real crime. "You've kept all this organized," he said, flipping through a binder I'd compiled. "Receipts, timelines, even screenshots of the HOA's meeting schedules or lack thereof. That'll help." I figured if I didn't keep a trail, she'd bury it. Rivas nodded. "You'd be surprised how often these HOA empires fall apart once someone shines a light on the books." By the end of the week, subpoenas were issued. Amanda's personal bank records, the HOA's financial statements, and even her email history were all under review. And it didn't take long before things unraveled completely. Turns out, Amanda had been using the HOA's budget to cover more than just fake fines. She'd submitted reimbursement forms for landscaping services that were never provided, hired her cousin's consulting firm for website updates that never happened, and worst of all, used HOA dues to pay for a home security system installed exclusively on her property. The board never approved any of it. The temporary committee we'd formed was livid. They called an emergency meeting and opened it to the entire neighborhood. We held it on the community green, under folding tents, because no one wanted to set foot inside the old HOA clubhouse Amanda had used like a throne room. Neighbors walked up with folding chairs, plastic coolers, even a few clipboards of their own. What started as a dozen people grew into over 50 by sundown. The committee laid out what had been found: nearly $27,000 in misappropriated funds, multiple fake violations, and at least 6 residents who'd been threatened with liens that were never legally filed. Then Rivas showed up. He didn't make a speech, just walked up to the front, showed his badge, and said, "This investigation is active. If anyone here has received or paid a fine in the last year and did not get a formal board-approved receipt, please stay after the meeting." Nobody left. Amanda didn't show. She didn't even open her door when the police came to question her the next morning, but they didn't need her cooperation. The paper trail was airtight. That weekend, I got a copy of the official audit findings. Amanda had funneled over $11,000 into a personal account under the alias HOA Admin Services LLC. The payments from Rob and the others, all siphoned through that dummy business. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. There's a weird kind of silence that comes after a storm when the wind's gone and the damage is just sitting there, waiting to be named. On Monday, a squad car pulled into Amanda's driveway. 2 officers went up the front steps, and after 15 minutes they walked her out in cuffs. Pale, silent, wearing the same sunglasses she'd always hidden behind, the neighborhood didn't cheer. But no one looked away either. The next HOA meeting was held in the elementary school cafeteria. No suits, no hierarchy, just a community trying to rebuild trust. We voted to dissolve the existing bylaws and draft a new charter one with clear transparency clauses, term limits, and mandatory third-party audits every year. I was asked to chair the drafting committee. I said yes, with one condition: no more power consolidated into one person's hands. Everything would be voted on. Everything would be documented. As for the land under Amanda's house, I kept it. But I waived rent for a year as long as she stayed out of HOA affairs permanently. Her lawyer accepted the deal without argument. I never moved the boat. Didn't have to. By spring, a few other residents had started bringing out their own boats, trailers, even a couple of restored classic cars. The new guidelines allowed for reasonable use of driveways as long as vehicles were operational and maintained. Ethan and I went fishing again that April. Caught a big one, this time a spotted bass that nearly snapped his line. He reeled it in with shaking arms and wide eyes. "Dad," he said, holding up the fish like a trophy, "this one's a keeper." "Yeah," I said, watching the sun rise over the water, "it is." By late April, the neighborhood felt like it had finally exhaled. The collective tension that had settled over the subdivision during Amanda's reign was slowly dissipating. Lawns looked healthier, kids were biking in the cul-de-sac again, and Saturday mornings weren't interrupted by uninvited inspections. There was a quiet freedom in the air, like the weight of unseen eyes had finally been lifted. We didn't talk about Amanda much, not because people forgot, but because they were done letting her name dominate their conversations. She was out on bail, under strict conditions, and confined to her property while the county built its case. Her house sat at the edge of the street like a monument to overreach, blinds drawn, porch empty, no foot traffic except the occasional courier delivering legal documents. The new committee had moved fast. With Max's guidance, we rewrote the HOA charter to prevent any future concentration of power. Every resident received a clear breakdown of their responsibilities and rights, and financial statements were posted monthly in a transparent, easy-to-read format. We added a clause requiring any changes to be ratified by at least 2/3 of the homeowners, a safeguard that couldn't be bypassed by anyone with a clipboard and a personal agenda. Still, there was unfinished business. The fraud charges were serious, but there was something else buried in the records, a transaction that had raised red flags with both Max and Detective Rivas. It involved a property transfer that Amanda had pushed through the previous year under the radar. According to the county assessor's office, a small triangle of land behind the community center had been quietly deeded to a shell company called Westfield Holdings. The company didn't exist in any corporate registry in the state, but the notary listed on the documents. That was Amanda's signature, dated 2 days after the board supposedly approved the transfer. Only the board never did. Max filed a formal complaint with the Department of Real Estate Fraud. Within a week, investigators traced the Westfield Holdings account to a P.O. box registered under Amanda's maiden name. It was enough to trigger a deeper probe, and that's when everything unraveled. A forensic audit revealed that Amanda had orchestrated a scheme to siphon HOA land into fake companies, then lease those parcels back to the association for inflated maintenance fees. She'd submitted invoices for phantom landscaping, graffiti removal, and utility inspections, none of which had ever occurred. The total, just under $62,000 in embezzled funds. The state attorney general's office took over the case. A grand jury issued an indictment on 12 counts of fraud, 3 counts of filing false instruments, and a felony charge of racketeering. The HOA was officially declared a victim of organized real estate fraud, which meant restitution would be pursued. "I've never seen a case like this in a neighborhood this size," Detective Rivas said when he handed me a copy of the full indictment summary. "She wasn't just greedy, she was methodical. If you hadn't started documenting everything, this would have stayed buried." It was surreal watching the news van park outside her house. A reporter stood in front of the brick facade, summarizing the charges while the camera panned across our street. Neighbors watched from porches, arms folded, silent. No one waved. No one smiled. A week later, Amanda was taken into custody again, this time without bail. She didn't resist. There was no speech, no last-minute defense, just a quiet ride in the back of a state cruiser. Her house sat vacant after that. The bank seized it within a month. Turns out she'd taken a second mortgage to cover legal fees, hoping she could beat the charges. She couldn't. It was auctioned off to a young couple with a toddler and a Labrador named Buck. I met them when they were moving in. "You're the guy who owns the lot under this place, right?" the husband asked, wiping sweat from his forehead. "That's right," I said, "but you're in the clear. The lease is official now, you're protected." He looked relieved. "Good. We just wanted a place where we didn't have to fight to hang a wind chime." "You picked the right block," I said. "We've got a brand new charter, no more nonsense," he nodded. "We heard. Folks at the county office said you turned the whole HOA around." I didn't correct him. It wasn't just me. It was everyone who stayed, everyone who showed up to those meetings, everyone who refused to be silenced. We did it together. The community center, once Amanda's personal fiefdom, was reopened for actual use. We hosted monthly potlucks, kids' movie nights, even a local crafts fair in June. The place felt alive again. One evening, just after sunset, I was sitting in a folding chair in my driveway, watching Ethan teach Buck how to fetch a tennis ball. I had a cold soda in hand and a paint-stained rag over my knee. Across the street, porch lights flicked on one by one, casting warm glows on the sidewalk. Max pulled up in his old Jeep. He stepped out, stretched, and handed me a manila envelope. "Final court order," he said. "The judge approved full restitution. The HOA will get its funds back through asset forfeiture. And you, my friend, officially own the strip under the former Queen's Castle without challenge." I opened the envelope and scanned the stamped document. It was all there, clean, final, binding. "Feels weird seeing it in print," I said. "You earned it. This whole place owes you a beer." "Maybe, but I'd settle for a quiet evening and no more envelopes duct taped to my door," he laughed. "Fair enough." We sat in silence for a while, just listening to the chirp of cicadas and the distant clatter of Buck's paws on the sidewalk. The air smelled like fresh-cut grass and charcoal from someone's backyard grill. Eventually, Max stood and brushed off his jeans. "You gonna keep the boat right there?" "Absolutely," I said. "It's tradition now." He clapped me on the shoulder. "Long as I get to come fishing next time." "You're on. Bring your own tackle. Ethan doesn't share." Ethan shot us a look from the yard. "I heard that." "You were supposed to," I said. Max chuckled and headed back to his Jeep. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the boat. The trailer needed a new coat of paint, and the winch still creaked, but it was exactly where it belonged. The war was over. Not with fireworks or applause, but with resolution. With truth laid bare, justice served, and a neighborhood restored. No more fake fines. No more threats. No more rule by fear. We'd taken back our street, and we weren't giving it up again.